Allen & Company wishes OOIDA and all members a safe, healthy, and joyous holiday season.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
Welcome to the 18th Annual Truckers for Troops campaign, our annual effort to raise money to send care packages to troops overseas and support veterans here at home. Just call 816-229-5791 to take part or go to OOIDA.com. You can join or renew your membership for a discounted rate. 10% of that will go into the fund, and OOIDA will match that money dollar for dollar. Again, that's 816-229-5791, or go to OOIDA.com and click on either the button that says Join Renew or Donate Now. On the OOIDA smartphone app, you could just click on Join Renew and fill out the form. On today's program, a new OOIDA Foundation survey sheds some new light on the lack of truck parking nationwide. The Foundation's Charles Sperry breaks down the results. We'll speak with a few people who have been around since the very beginning of Truckers for Troops about its history and how it's made a difference. Colorado is the latest state to set up an outright ban on handheld cell phone use while driving. I'll talk with Sam Cole of the Colorado DOT. And finally, the OOIDA Board of Directors meets twice a year to discuss the issues the association will pursue. I'll get a preview of the meeting this week from Colin Long of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. And now, here's Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. The OOIDA Foundation is out with the results of a new survey that takes another hard look at the truck parking problem nationwide. And it is still a problem nationwide, which will come as no surprise to anyone who makes a living in the trucking industry. But the survey of more than 1,200 responses does bring a couple new issues to light, says OOIDA Foundation research analyst Charles Sperry.
We did notice that there were gradations of the problem. There were differences depending on, of course, obviously, what region you operated in. And, a lot of people have been touting paid parking as the solution to all our problems. And honestly, it really, from what we have been able to gather from our membership, it doesn't appear that that's really the case. Largely, it appears that people are trying to more take advantage of the situation by putting forward paid parking. So if you don't really have any other alternative, you're kind of forced into it, rather than attempting to make paid parking actually attractive by providing goods and services that make it worth your money.
Sperry added that when it comes to paid parking, the survey found that truck drivers are not fans.
Generally speaking, that is correct. Now, about 40% of the people that responded do use paid parking, but it's more of a matter that they don't really have many other options available to them. But interestingly enough, even paid parking, a lot of times it appears that the places that they put paid parking are areas where it's not necessarily completely convenient. It seems like they're looking for places that have cheap land, where there's stuff available so that they can put in this, large parking lot. But that's not really where a lot of people need to have parking. They need parking that are going to be much closer to, distribution centers and stuff like that. And it doesn't really appear that that's where a lot of the paid parking is going.
Sperry said respondents feel like those pushing paid parking are just trying to make a buck.
They had free parking in the past, and now people are saying, well, now you have to pay for it. And they're not really getting anything more out of the deal other than just a parking space. And so it just feels to most of our members that responded that people are simply trying to gouge them for more money. And that's the general feel that we get from this survey.
Of those who do use paid parking, the average for a night runs about $20. And while you might think that company drivers and leased-on owner-operators are reimbursed for that expense, Sperry said a vast majority are not.
One of the big problems that people face, that drivers face when it comes to the issue of the cost surrounding paid parking, is that only 2% of leased-on owner-operators are ever reimbursed for that paid parking, and only 49%, so just under half of company drivers are reimbursed for their paid parking, which that should not be the case.
Also surprising to Sperry that about half of respondents said they often or always see unused paid parking spaces.
A surprising number of people responded that they're seeing empty spots among the paid parking lots, which kind of surprised me a little bit, but I think that really just goes to indicate just how little value people are finding in that paid parking compared to what they're getting. The cost just doesn't seem to justify it to most people.
The OOIDA Foundation survey also confirmed some other things. 59% of respondents said they routinely shut down earlier than intended because they're worried about finding parking. On average, that's about 8 hours of driving time lost per week, which translates to an annual loss of around $4,600 in potential income per driver.
I mean, people are concerned. They're running up against their hours of service, and they can either take that parking spot that they see right there right now, or they can try to go, just that little bit further and risk, running into that hard cutoff. And a lot of people don't want to risk it. I mean, they know how bad it is out there, and so they prefer to shut down a little bit earlier to get a guaranteed parking space where they're going to be safe, where they're not going to be parked along the side of the road or on an on-ramp or off-ramp or whatever. And They don't want a ticket, that ticket is not going to be worth it to them. That fine isn't going to be worth it to them. And, not even counting the actual danger of parking in those spaces. So, and sometimes, people are forced to, they run into their hours of service and that's it. They have to pull over somewhere. So people are always just kind of balancing that mental calculus there.
In the end, the foundation report presents a snapshot of the situation truckers face on an everyday basis. Sperry hopes the information nudges the industry closer to a solution.
I mean, of course, obviously, this situation doesn't just affect owner-operators. This affects carriers as well. So I think that the nice thing, as you said, in this particular case, is that it seems that most aspects of trucking, both carriers and the owner-operators and just everybody, there's broad consensus that this is a problem. We need a solution, and so being able to work with people who we might sometimes have other disagreements with is kind of nice. We've been able to approach lawmakers kind of presenting a united front, saying, hey, this is necessary. We really, really need these changes made.
There's legislation in both chambers of Congress that would go a long way toward making those changes. The Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act would grant $755 million over 3 years toward the construction of new free truck parking spaces. To get your elected members of Congress on board, check out the fightingfortruckers.com website, click on the key trucking legislation tab at the top of the page, and scroll down for details. That's Landline Now News for today. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Scott. Once again, you're listening to the annual Truckers for Troops fundraising effort here on Landline Now. Just call 816-229-5791 to take part, or go to OOIDA.com and click on Donate Now or Join Renew. You can join or renew your membership at a discounted rate, and 10% of it will go into the Truckers for Troops Fund, with OOIDA matching that money. Again, the phone number is 816-229-5791, or go to OOIDA.com. Next, Ashley Blackford has the story of how the Truckers for Troops program got its start and what it's done over the years. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Running on ultra-low sulfur diesel? Stay protected this winter with Howe's Diesel Treat and Diesel Lifeline. Steer clear of gel and ice with North America's #1 trusted brand. Find Howe's products nationwide at select retailers, auto parts stores, truck stops, and on Amazon.com.
When it's time to overhaul your truck engine, help protect it by insisting on a genuine Vibratech TVD crankshaft damper. Heavy duty, absolute premium quality, and they're made right here in the USA. Find a dealer at VibratechTVD.com.
Truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need Truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide.
Truck revived. Deliveries thrive.
Truckdown.com.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Welcome back to Landline Now and the annual Truckers for Troops telethon, an effort to raise money to send care packages to our troops overseas and to support homeless veterans through the Veterans Community Project.
I'd like to thank you for your service, your sacrifice, your courage, and for fighting to protect our freedoms.
I want to thank all you veterans. You're out there doing a great job.
Thank you so much for all that you do. The Truckers for Troops campaign kicks off today here at OOIDA. And to talk about that and give us a little bit of the history, Norita Taylor, Jamie Jones, and Mark Reddick join me. Thank you all for coming in.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Welcome. Now, this year marks the 17th year that OOIDA has done the Truckers for Troops campaign. Norita, I'll start with you. For those who aren't familiar, what is this campaign?
Sure. So this started out as a care package campaign, and it has, over the years, evolved into for veterans as well. But basically, back then, we had a presence overseas in the Middle East, and we knew that our members had a keen interest in showing support, and that a lot of them are veterans themselves. And we weren't quite sure what was going to happen, but we said, we got to try this. It can't hurt to try. And so we just said, hey, we want to send care packages to those serving overseas.
Yeah, the whole not having any clue. I remember that first year we were sitting here and we're like, how much do you think we'll raise? Do you think we'll raise $5,000?
Yeah, and we thought we were going to have one person who was on staff doing it on her own. Oh, we'll just give the money to her and she'll get some more packages out.
Yeah, it took off like wildfire.
Yep.
It was great.
Yep. And do any of you remember the number? I remember hearing this story a lot of how much, kind of was the goal, and then
the goal was 5,000.
Okay.
But we exceeded that the first of the 5 days.
Oh, yeah, wow. I think we were closer to like 40,000 that first year.
Wow.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. And it was just so uplifting because we knew it was the natural connection, but we were so blown away again by the generosity of truck drivers. I mean, you always know it because we get to tell those stories, but this just blew us away.
And Jamie, that's something I wanted to ask you about. One thing that I've noticed since working here the past couple of years is the connection between veterans and truck drivers. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, the foundation has done research on the OOIDA membership, which really does parallel the industry as a whole, and that number bounces around between 30 to 40%, depending on the year or whatever that we do the research. But I think it even goes beyond that. You know, those are veterans, but there's so many people in trucking who have family members who serve our country and need to be recognized for that. So it's just a broader connection than even just the third of the industry.
It's a natural connection.
Mm-hmm. Mark, I want to take you back 17 years, which I'm sure you're sharp as a tack. You'll remember.
Sure, let's go with that.
I'm just curious, Landline's involvement in that and just kind of how it's grown over the years.
At the start of it, we were trying to find a way to use the radio show to do something to kind of unite truckers at the holiday around a cause other than those issues we typically talk about. And we had a meeting. I remember Sylvia Dodson, who's the manager of membership, was there. I was there. And then Mike Shermley, who was our marketing director at the time. And then there was an open door and Nikki Johnson was in the next room, so she heard everything. But we kind of brainstormed it. And it was something we weren't quite sure how we were going to do it. But we decided to go with the whole idea of kind of the typical thing you'd hear when NPR or PBS is raising funds, except fun. And that was one of the key things was, none of us really liked listening to those. That's when we turned the TV and radio off. And so we thought we really need them to turn those on. So that kind of helped us to develop the character of the thing as we got into it. And we kind of divided the duties. Landline's media operation was in charge of getting the publicity out. Membership took those calls, got people involved, served as that personal connection. And then when we were doing primarily care packages, at first it was kind of wild the way we did it. We had staff involved, we had volunteers, we had assembly lines down in the basement of the building. But Nikki Johnson eventually kind of became the organizer of that. And she really did a wonderful job of just being very, very efficient, and not just in terms of using the money to buy things. She got the Sonic here in Grain Valley to donate crates of mustard and ketchup packets to help make the MREs
Edible,
right. And they got Harris Casino to donate a pallet of playing cards that were used from the casino and still very much usable, of course, by people that just wanted to play cards. So there was a lot of getting other organizations involved. It was very neat.
I think it's a good time to point out, too, these are not shoebox care packages that we're talking about.
I wanted to, talk about those, kind of explain what they look like.
Well, I mean, they weigh upwards of 70 pounds. There is no spare space in them ever. Talk about efficient packing. I think that's really impressive.
And we've managed to, our shipping department has streamlined that, so there's no overhead costs in that regard. They just, streamline it into their daily duties whenever that we have a care package request, which, by the way, this is still a care package program. So anybody who wants to have one sent to someone, just let us know.
And there will be enough stuff in it for their whole unit. I mean, and it's everything from socks and the condiments and games. And we've had squirt guns. Instead of using packing peanuts, they've used
hygiene products.
Actual peanuts.
The whole list. Normally, a lot of care package operations get some kind of standard list from the military. Nikki talked to actual people who were serving in the field and said, what do you want or need? And I think that made these much more effective in kind of uplifting the troops.
Yeah, that's actually one of the first things when I was learning about OOIDA. Somebody who works with my husband in the National Guard received one of these packages and said it was the nicest package, that they'd ever received when they were overseas. And so that was like the first thing I found out about OOIDA. So it's been neat to learn about them since.
In the early days of it, I think the other part that made it so special, talking about the things going into it, our news anchor at the time, Reed Black, was he is a very proud Army veteran. And he would have stories, and he would talk about how clean white socks. He always told his clean white socks story. But he had so many, and his passion for this campaign, I think, fueled a lot of us, and that energy level that Mark was talking about.
Absolutely.
Because it gave us that real-life connection right there at the table while we were having these conversations.
Yeah. Now, more than $800,000 has been raised since this started back in 2007. Did you all think when this started it would grow to where it is? Did you think we'd be doing this sitting down 17 years later? And
I do. I think we realized that we had something. We had something. We knew we might, but I think we realized we do have something. I'm not surprised at all.
Again, that first day, if you had asked us the first day, we're like, if we can just get through this week. We're
Right.
I think that was our survival goal, was to get through the week.
And we did.
And we did.
And I think we had a moment, this started in the middle of an actual war. And when the wars were winding down, we thought, well, now what do we do?
Yeah.
But I think we did a very good job of changing tracks to help out the veterans, and that seemed a very natural progression.
And the Veterans Community Project is something that we've started to partner with over the past couple of years. Norita, tell me more about that.
Sure. So the Veterans Community Project is headquartered or founded here in the Kansas City area, and they are a combination of services for all veterans. They have the Tiny Houses campus, but they also have outreach services and other things that aren't necessarily just for the residents, but for any veteran. And by the way, when they say any veteran, they mean it. They aren't locked into some of the red tape that the Veterans Administration is the way they phrase it is great. They say anyone who has raised their right hand and taken the oath. And so they have all kinds of services, not just for those that are unhoused. Now, they've been branching out to other areas, other states, and we've just been kind of following along and doing stories and talking to them and taking donations to those locations as well.
I think one of the things that's worthy of note about Veterans Community Project is in terms of getting people who are homeless into a permanent living situation, their success rate is easily double what other organizations or programs outside of veterans are doing. They really are very successful at doing this and really helping these veterans.
I think another aspect, and I know it's near and dear to Narita's heart as well as mine, is so many programs for unhoused individuals do not allow for pets to come along with them. And whether they're certified or not as therapy dogs or emotional support or whatever, VCP allows that, and they even have services geared toward the animals to help make sure that they're healthy and taken care of as well.
Yeah, that's an extra cost as well for veterans and, veterinarian services to take care of them and the supplies that they need as well.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to talk to one of the residents over the summer, and him and his dog, he said, I wouldn't have come here if she couldn't have come with me. I would have rather been on the streets than be here,
And that's the whole reason why they do that. They know that that is a barrier to getting people to transition from the streets to a tiny house.
I think that's you actually did a great story on that, Ashley, and that's still on the Landline Media YouTube page. So if anybody wants to check that out, because it was really an inspirational story all the way around.
And video, dogs.
Yeah.
What more do you want?
We really had to twist your arm to get you to do that one.
Yeah. I was like, a dog? An interview? Absolutely. Tell me when. Now, becoming an OOIDA member this week also has benefits the campaign. Tell me more about that.
Sure. So during the week, the cost to join or renew is discounted from $45 to $35. 10% of that is going to go to the Truckers for Troops campaign, and OOIDA is matching that. So call or go online, join or renew, or give straight donations. Either way, that's the way it works.
And I think it's just really cool because we do have so many benefits here that it's a win-win for everybody involved. You get your membership renewed, and there's so many discounts and programs that we have, and you can check those out in the magazine, Landline Magazine, also on the OOIDA website. So it's not – we want you to have something, good out of this as well.
Yeah, there's really no other organization like this one in terms of how they support truck drivers. And the fact that this is run by truck drivers always has been, always will be.
Yeah, talk to me more about that. Just when this campaign is going on in this building, there is kind of more of an energy and compassion towards this campaign.
Absolutely. I think a lot of it is, we talked about the connection between truckers and veterans. We have a lot of veterans here in the building. And, of course, we also have a lot of folks who came here off the road because we value that experience of people behind the wheel. And I think so that connection carries through right here into the building.
And, right now we even have an employee food drive for donations to go to VCP going on. So we wage a little war on that one. We're divided up into teams, and those tables are filling up pretty good, would have to say.
And speaking of challenges, when you do call in or when you do go online to join or renew, let us know which branch of the service you are in or that you connect with because of family, whichever one. Because internally here, we kind of have our own little internal contest where we're keeping track of Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines.
Space Force,
yes. Let us
Coast
know.
Guard.
Now, Army's won the past.
They always win.
Okay, I was going to say it's been a while, but
They are the largest, so it makes
Yeah.
sense. But we do it anyway, just for fun.
All right. If someone does want to donate, how can they do that?
They can just hit the donate button on the homepage or on the page where everything is housed for Truckers for Troops on the website. Or when they call in, just say, I'd like to make a straight donation to Truckers for Troops.
Wonderful. And that website is ooida.com/truckers-for-troops. Thank you all so much for coming in.
Hey,
you're welcome.
It's always our pleasure. Thanks.
Just want to say thanks for all the troops and our veterans for all their sacrifices that they make to keep everybody safe.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At TruckStop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on TruckStop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
For truckers, federal rules have, for years now, forbidden the use of handheld cell phones or other mobile devices when the vehicle is in motion. But now, more and more states are applying the same rules to the people who drive cars. You're listening to Landline Now, and I'm your host, Mark Redding. Welcome back to the program. Among the latest states to ban car drivers from using handheld cell phones is Colorado, where a new law takes effect on January 1st. The agency taking the lead in getting the word out about that new law is the Colorado Department of Transportation, which in 2024 issued a report that said a significant percentage of Coloradans admit to using their cell phones while driving. Sam Cole is with the Colorado DOT, and I spoke with him recently about the new law, what it requires, the reasoning behind it, and how the DOT is getting ready for the effort. Regarding the new law going into effect January 1st, regarding the use of mobile phones, I'm wondering if you can give us kind of an overview of what exactly this new law will require of people.
Yeah, it's actually quite simple. The new law requires people not to hold their phone while they're driving. It's that simple. And it's easy to get around. I mean, you can buy a phone mount for your vehicle, put it on your dashboard, enable the Android Auto or Apple CarPlay so that you can use that, but do anything besides holding that phone while driving. We see about a 2 to 6 times greater likelihood of a crash for people that are driving distracted on their phone. In Colorado, we see about 70 deaths every single year because of distracted driving. And certainly one of the main problems with distracted driving, people take their hands off the wheel in order to use their phone. And this law will put that to an end.
Let's talk a little bit about the why. And I want to start with, I read in some recent coverage about the 2024 driver behavior report that was put out by the Colorado DOT. And I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit in terms of what that report says about drivers and cell phone use while driving.
Yeah, well, it's a random sample study that CDOT did. We got responses back from about 1,000 Coloradans of all backgrounds from across the state. And most people, unfortunately, told us that, yeah, they use their phone while they're driving. And that's really bad news. But the good news is that 45% of them told us that they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't hold their phones if they had some sort of an accessory to prevent them from doing so, such as that mount for their dashboard to put their phone, or enabling some sort of Bluetooth device on their vehicle. So they were very open to overcoming the problem, shall I say, with other resources. But we think this new law may actually be the tipping point. We think this is what's needed to really push people to put down their phones and drive, but both hands on the wheel, and do what needs to be done in order to get home safely.
Just for clarification, our audience is made up of drivers of large trucks, semis. Do the figures there apply just to cars? Do they include trucks? Do you have a breakdown of the figures, or is this just all drivers?
Yeah, we didn't actually separate it out to semi drivers. As far as I know, there's a separate law that would apply to large trucks. I think there's already a commercial truck, large truck law that prohibits, I could be wrong, that prohibits these guys from being on their phones while they're driving.
I believe it's on the federal level, and yes, I do believe that that's in place. I want to talk a little bit about the risks of using a cell phone while driving. And certainly this is something we've talked about a lot on our program, and it's a topic of conversation in the industry. But having looked at this from the professional side, what do studies you've seen say about the potential risk of cell phone use while driving?
Well, we see about 15,000 crashes every year in Colorado that involve a distracted driver. One of the top causal factors of crashes in Colorado are people that are distracted. Distracted by their phones, distracted by people talking to them in the vehicle and they're turning towards them and talking to them, distracted by pets. Some people are putting on makeup. There's all sorts of distractions, but one of the most dangerous distractions are phones, because the phone requires you to take your hands off the wheel and your eyes off the road in order to interact with it. That's extremely dangerous. And if you take your eyes off the road for just 5 seconds, at 55 miles per hour, you've driven about the length of a football field. And think what could happen in the length of a football field while you're driving 55 miles per hour. Anybody that's ever been in a crash knows that things happen suddenly and they require you to react instantaneously. And if you don't have your eyes on the wheel, your eyes on the road, you are not going to be acting instantaneously.
Are there particular people among drivers who are at risk from distracted driving accidents, specifically involving cell phones?
Yeah, we definitely see those people on our roadways who tend to take the most risks are young males, especially men in their 20s and 30s who think they're invincible and think they can do several things at once while they're driving, and they can't. And that's why we see so many of these distracted driving crashes involve young men. They think they can get away with it, and they can't because they're human just like you and me. So we see an overrepresentation of young males in distracted driving crashes. And perhaps this new law actually will go a long way in sending them the message to get them off their phones and driving, which is the task at hand.
And that's not totally a surprise. I mean, young male drivers end up at the top of a lot of statistics involving driving, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. This is just one of many risky behaviors that we see young men engage in on our roadways, whether it be speeding, drinking and driving, but definitely being on your phone in an unsafe manner is another one of them.
Okay. I want to go back to something you said earlier. When we talk about cell phones and distracted driving, we tend to stick to that topic, but obviously this problem existed long before cell phones arrived on the scene. And you mentioned a number of other potential driver distractions. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what other types of distractions DOT is looking at. I mean, obviously this law in particular deals with cell phones, but what is the attitude of the state toward these other distractions in terms of enforcement?
Yeah, well, you can be pulled over for driving recklessly no matter what you're doing. If you're eating while you're driving, if you're talking to passengers and you're swerving or you're driving at an unsafe speed because you are distracted, you can be pulled over for any distracted behavior if it means that you're driving unsafely. But for this new cell phone law that targets handheld phones, yeah, you can be pulled over if you are on your phone driving in an unsafe manner, and we see a lot of people doing that. I think the reason why the legislature targeted phones is because it's an easy target. In other words, it's a problem that can be corrected. Vehicles these days are extremely complicated, and there's all sorts of interfaces, and there's nothing we can do with those distractions by the vehicle controls and those panels that they have and the screens with multiple interfaces. That's a manufacturing problem. But what we can do something about is are these phones. So that's why we're doing this. You know, and I could go on, but people have been distracted ever since the car was invented by whatever. And but this is one thing that is absolutely unnecessary, and it's something that we can control.
Okay. I'm wondering if you've looked at what other states are doing in regard to this issue. Have you gathered that information? And if so, what sort of information did you find from other states?
Yeah, I mean, Colorado is really just playing catch up when it comes to this cell phone law. Already 29 other states have the hands-free ban going into effect. And a lot of the states have seen really positive results. Michigan, after the first year, saw a 13% decrease in the number of distracted driving crashes. So we're really hopeful that this will make a dent in our distracted driving crashes in Colorado.
I want to talk a little bit about penalties here because that obviously is important in terms of deterrence. What sort of fines will people face if they violate this new law?
So there is a $75 fine for violating the law for the first time. Although there's one caveat there. You can get that fine waived if you buy a device for your vehicle to mount your phone to. So you don't have to use your phone. You don't have to hold your phone in the future. So that's great. But in the future, if you're racking up multiple offenses, those fines are really going to add up, as well as the points against your license.
You mentioned there, if they get a device that will hold the phone, what about Bluetooth devices? Because those are very popular among a certain segment of the population. Things like the headset I'm wearing now, but obviously operated by Bluetooth.
Well, yeah, I mean, chances are if they are holding their phone, that means they probably don't have Android Auto or Apple CarPlay or some sort of a Bluetooth interface on their vehicle. But the way the law is written is if they show a receipt for a device. Maybe it would be up to the judge, but I think if you went in there and said, you know what, I've downloaded or I've enabled Apple CarPlay on my vehicle, I'm good to go, and I promise to use it from now on, maybe the judge would have some leniency.
Okay. Now, is this a primary offense? I mean, can people be pulled over just for this? Or does there need to be some other offense in addition to this in order for police to stop drivers?
I mean, the question about primary versus secondary offense is a good one. Technically, it is a secondary offense, but I think it's really going to depend on the law enforcement agency and how they interpret somebody's driving. In other words, law enforcement agency may interpret the fact that you are driving through a construction zone holding your phone as an unsafe driving maneuver, and they could pull you over for that. Or speeding while you're also on your phone. Of course, you can be pulled over for that. But in itself, just being on your phone, holding your phone to your ear, taking your eyes off the road, taking your hands off the wheel, that could be construed as reckless driving, and you could be pulled over by some law enforcement agencies.
Just a few seconds left, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how the Colorado Department of Transportation and other agencies are getting the word out about this, because obviously not a lot of folks actually follow state legislation, but obviously this is something that's going to impact them pretty quickly. How are you communicating with the public to let them know that this is the case now?
Yeah, so we've got, 3 million drivers in Colorado that we need to raise awareness about the law. We don't want people being caught off guard come January 1st. So yeah, we've got an ad campaign that's going out there. We're working with the news media. We're working with law enforcement, hospitals, anybody that wants to help us get the word out. But certainly we're going to be hitting social media hard. We're going to be hitting radio hard and all the other ways to get the word out. Because no one wants to get a $75 ticket.
There you go. Well, Sam, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Mark.
I've been talking with Sam Cole of the Colorado Department of Transportation about a new law going into effect on January 1st that will ban all handheld cell phone use by car drivers and others while their vehicles are in motion. As Sam mentioned, drivers violating the ban could face an initial ticket for $75 as well as points on their license. The penalties increase on subsequent offenses. And as we noted earlier, this does not change the rules for truck drivers who can face penalties of up to $2,750 for the first offense. We'll be back in just a moment with more news and information. Please stay with us through a short commercial break. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit capitalreman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. The OOIDA Board of Directors meets twice a year to discuss the issues that the association will pursue in the coming year. Here to give us a preview is Colin Long of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. Colin, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I wanted to say Happy Veterans Day to all our members and all veterans across the country, frankly, who served. Thanks a lot for your service.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, this week, we do have the Board of Directors coming to OOIDA headquarters. And one of the key factors that is kind of looming over this discussion is that we have a highway bill coming due soon. Why is that important when we talk about what issues the association is going to pursue in the coming year?
Yeah, so the highway bill, or the more technical term we sometimes use in D.C., the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill, basically sets transportation, and specifically highway, policy and funding for a number of years here in Washington. It could be 5, it could be 6. It depends on what they're capable of getting done. But really, it charts out a course for a long-term strategy on transportation policy, and that includes anything from how we fund our roads to how we build our roads to the policies affecting folks who use the roads, like our members. And all of those aspects really have a direct impact on trucking, and trucking has a direct impact on them. I mean, we pay more into, or I should say, we proportionally pay more into the Highway Trust Fund than passenger vehicle drivers, certainly. So we certainly care about how Congress determines funding for the next highway bill. And then we also have priorities about how that funding should be used. Like, we want to see truck parking funding. We want to see investment in building out capacity for truck parking. And then if you remember previous highway bills, a lot of requirements on the operation of heavy vehicles are set at that time. I mean, things like the AEB mandate were in the last highway bill. And there's efforts to increase insurance requirements in highway bills. So there's a lot of work for us to do here in Washington, D.C., to make sure that bill reflects the needs of our members as extensively as possible.
Just before we get into some of the issues here, how much time does Congress actually have before the existing highway bill expires?
Well, that's a bit of a trick question, if we're being honest, because they have 2 years. It doesn't end until September 30th of 2026. But keep in mind, this is a Congress that likes to wait until the last minute to do just about anything. I mean, we don't even have the government funded through the end of the fiscal year yet. So the hope is that obviously something gets done rather quickly, but I wouldn't be surprised if they hold out until the summer of 26 or even September of 26, just because you're also looking at midterm elections that November. I can't believe I'm already talking about the next round of elections, but when folks want to get reelected and return to Washington, it pays to pass a big infrastructure bill that starts getting money out the door for necessary highway projects across the country. So it's tough to say. I mean, they are certainly starting work now. We've already had conversations with folks in both chambers about what our priorities might look like. So the folks who are going to be drafting this legislation, although a lot of the details remain kind of up in the air, they're starting to chart a course for how to construct this bill and get it through both chambers of Congress and ultimately signed into law by the president.
So let's get back to the OOIDA board here, because, of course, that's the reason we're even talking about this at this point. Yep. I'm wondering if you can give us a little bit of a laundry list here. What are the key issues that the board is going to be looking at? I know that you bring a lot of issues to them. I know that you've been talking with them over time before the board meeting. But what are these key issues that the association is looked at over the past year or is about to look at that might figure into that whole process?
Yeah, it breaks down into two categories, I guess you could say. And we're playing a little bit of offense and a little bit of defense. There are things we proactively support, things we want to see Congress include in the bill. Those are things we've been talking about for years: truck parking funding, improved restroom access, enhanced driver training, improvements to autonomous vehicle reporting and accountability and transparency, greater broker transparency. We'll talk about hours of service improvements. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But then there's also a lot of defense we have to play, and we have to prevent a lot of bad policies from finding their way into this bill, which can be just as arduous as trying to get things included. But from a defensive standpoint, I mean, we're going to try to prevent increases in minimum liability insurance, prevent a speed limiter mandate, prevent underride guard mandates, especially side underride guard, I should say. We'll probably be against size and weight increases, as we always are. We'll take a close and critical look at EVs, electric vehicles, and EV charging infrastructure, how much Congress plans to spend on that. If anything, I mean, we've got some laundry lists here on both sides of the equation. But what's really good is that talking with our board will certainly give us an idea of what the real priorities are amongst all of these policies.
What sort of input does the board offer you? And just for the listeners, we're talking about basically 22 people who are all truck drivers, either current or a few of them, I think, have retired. But what sort of input does that board offer you and the other folks in D.C.? And how do you put that to use on Capitol Hill when you're talking about these issues?
Sure. I mean, they live these issues day in and day out, and they also interact with tons of drivers who are OOIDA members, but not necessarily just OOIDA members. I mean, we have our board members reporting back to us all the time about what they're hearing on the ground and what they're hearing other drivers, whether they're OOIDA members or not, telling them about a lot of these policies. And frankly, it's that experience, that insight that really helps us move forward with the strategy. And there's a give and take here. Don't get me wrong. I mean, as a government affairs team, we have to be aware of what potential pitfalls there are, what potential opportunities there are, and present them to the board. And then there's this give and take interaction that goes on trying to determine priorities. But really, we lean on them to give us kind of the expert take on a lot of these issues. And I say this all the time when I talk about advocacy. Like, truckers are experts on trucking issues. They shouldn't be shy about sharing that expertise with the folks who make the regulations, the laws, the policies that affect them. So our board is probably the best example of how that gets done, but it should be getting done on every level of government with every member of OOIDA.
Something else that's happening right now that kind of figures into this, and we just have a couple of minutes left here. Sure. We also have a new administration coming in, and it appears the president's party will control the Senate, and it's starting to look more and more like they may control the House. Yep. We've seen one Trump administration already, so we have somewhat of a good idea of the general direction things will go. What sort of opportunities does this present on trucking issues?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, J.D. Vance, the vice president-elect, has supported us on things like truck parking and speed limiters. So we look at that and think, oh, those are great opportunities to capitalize on a new administration and really prioritize the advancement of truck parking funding and the elimination of a speed limiter mandate. And those are kind of two examples that really pop to the forefront. But I think our ability to prevent things like unnecessary regulations or an insurance increase just got a lot easier. I should never say easy, but got a lot more opportunistic because we will have complete Republican control of Congress. And frankly, if you remember the first Trump administration, taking an axe to burdensome and unnecessary regulation was a priority, and it sounds like that will continue to be a priority, so we certainly welcome that.
Okay. Colin, thank you very much for the information.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
I've been talking with Colin Long of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. And once again, this week is the annual Truckers for Troops fundraising effort on Landline Now. Just call 816 1-866-229-5791 to take part, or go to OOIDA.com. You can join or renew your membership for a discounted rate, and 10% of that will go into the fund to send care packages to troops overseas and support veterans here at home. And OOIDA will match that money dollar for dollar. Again, that's 816-229-5791, or go to OOIDA.com. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with more. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome,
and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.